The day I retired wasn't supposed to feel like a funeral. After 24 years in the Navy, most of them swallowed by steel hulls, bad coffee, and deployments that bled into one another, I thought I knew what endings felt like. But that morning, as I stood in front of the mirror, pulling off my uniform for the last time, something inside me felt off. Not sadness. Not relief either. Just hollow. I didn't tell Kelly I was coming home early. I figured I'd surprise her. Maybe take her out to that diner she liked, the one with the lemon pie and the cracked coffee mugs. Maybe we'd talk, really talk, for the first time in months. I don't know. I just wanted something to feel easy again. Like before. I parked on the curb just past noon. The house looked the same. Navy blue shutters, a wind chime dancing lazily on the front porch. But as soon as I stepped inside, the air felt different. The kind of quiet that isn't peace. More like something holding its breath. The kitchen hit me first. It smelled like sautéed onions. Kelly's favorite base when she was trying to make something impressive. But underneath that was a sharp floral scent. Not overpowering, just faint enough to make me freeze. Jasmine, maybe? Or some fancy boutique brand she'd never worn before. It was sweet and unfamiliar, and it didn't belong in our house. Then I saw them. A vase stood dead center on the dining table, filled with white lilies and pale pink roses. A full, extravagant bouquet that didn't look cheap. Not the kind you grab on your way out of the grocery store. Next to it, a folded card tucked halfway into the blooms. No envelope. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. Congrats, beautiful. See you at the bay. No signature. Just those words. 5 words that knocked the wind out of me harder than any wave I'd ever taken to the chest. I stood there, card still in hand, when I heard footsteps from the hall. Kelly appeared a moment later. Her face lit up with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She had her phone in one hand, thumb hovering over the screen like she'd just hit send on something she shouldn't have. "Oh, you're home early," she said, sounding just a little too surprised. Her eyes flicked to the flowers, then to my hand holding the card. There was a beat, just a moment, where she froze. That micro-expression you only notice when you've spent years reading faces under pressure. Then she recovered, fast. "Oh, those?" she said with a little laugh. "You won't believe this, the guys from work sent them. Total prank. They said I'm officially a Navy wife on retirement. So they joked I'd be spending my days sipping wine and flirting at the bay." She grinned, like it was all hilarious. "You know how they are." She plucked the card from my hand gently and slid it into her pocket, like it was just a receipt or a gum wrapper. Her fingers lingered a bit too long. Then, like clockwork, she changed the subject. "Did you pick up the discharge documents from base? You said you needed them to file the insurance paperwork this week." I blinked. "No, I figured I'd get them tomorrow." "You sure?" she asked, already walking toward the sink, rinsing something that didn't need rinsing. "They said they needed it in by Friday. You don't want delays with benefits, right?" That was it. End of story. She moved on and I let her. Not because I believed her, but because something inside me, something I hadn't listened to in a long time, told me to wait. That entire exchange couldn't have lasted more than 60 seconds. But it rewired the way I saw everything. The joke didn't make sense. Kelly worked part-time at the medical clinic on base, not exactly the kind of crowd that sends flowers as pranks. And even if they had, why lilies and roses? Why no name? More than that, her laugh wasn't real. Kelly's real laugh made her eyes crinkle. This one was too clean, too quick, like she'd practiced it, like she'd run through the scene already. That was the moment something cracked. Not a blowout, not an explosion, just a quiet fracture, deep and low and unmistakable. For the next few minutes, I said nothing. I wandered into the living room and turned on the TV, letting the noise cover my thoughts. She moved around the house like normal, humming softly as she folded laundry, texting someone, pretending to scroll recipes on her tablet. I watched her, not like a husband admiring his wife, like a man watching a stranger in his home. I don't know how long that silence stretched between us. Long enough that she eventually came and sat on the arm of the couch beside me. resting her hand on my shoulder like she always did when she wanted to smooth things over. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Just tired." She leaned in and kissed the top of my head. "You've earned it," she said softly. I didn't look up, because something about that kiss felt like the closing of a book. Not an affectionate moment, more like punctuation, a full stop. The truth is, I'd always prided myself on being the kind of guy who didn't jump to conclusions. I've seen what suspicion does to people. I'd watched guys on deployment unravel over phantom affairs, reading into every delay, every missed call. I promised myself I'd never be that guy. But now I wasn't so sure. There's a difference between suspicion and awareness. Suspicion is noise. Awareness is pattern. And this wasn't noise. The flowers, the card, the strange perfume, the way she dodged the moment like it was second nature. It all felt like a well-worn routine, like she'd been doing this dance for a while, and I just never bothered to learn the steps. I don't remember what we did the rest of that day. I think she made pasta. I think I pretended to enjoy it. We probably watched something on Netflix, half listening while scrolling through our phones. At some point, she mentioned needing to stop by the pharmacy in the morning before work. I nodded, said nothing. That night, lying next to her in bed, I stared at the ceiling long after she drifted off. Her breathing was slow, steady, peaceful. Mine wasn't. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, I didn't feel like we were under the same roof at all. It's a strange thing, realizing the person you trust most might be living a life that doesn't include you. Stranger still is how quickly your body adjusts to that truth, quietly, without ceremony. Just a shift in the air, a silent retreat inward. That night, as I lay awake beside her, I didn't plan revenge. I didn't imagine confrontations or ultimatums. I made a decision. From now on, I would watch, carefully, patiently, without giving myself away. Because if I was right, if Kelly was hiding something, she would slip eventually. And this time, I'd be watching. In the weeks that followed, I became someone I didn't recognize. Not angry, not paranoid, just alert. I started waking up before her. Not out of discipline, out of instinct. She was usually already moving by then, slipping on her running shoes with a quietness that felt too precise. At first, I thought nothing of it. Kelly never liked running before. She said it was bad for her knees, blamed it on a high school injury she only brought up when we were invited on hikes. But now, every morning at 6 sharp, she went out the front door with a headband and a phone tucked into her sleeve. No headphones. Just that phone, silent, face down when she came back, like it was hiding something it had already said. I asked her once, casually, "Since when are you a runner?" She grinned, tied her shoes tighter. "Trying something new. You always said I should find a routine, right?" "Right." Except the first time I looked closely at her running shoes, the soles were nearly spotless. No grit, no wear. A pair she must have kept clean for someone else to see. One morning I followed her, not closely, just enough to watch where she went. She jogged to the corner, cut across the vacant lot behind the gas station, then disappeared down a road that led toward the beach. When she came back an hour later, her hair was damp. Not from sweat, but mist. Salt mist. Her sandals were back on her feet, the laces from her running shoes untied and looped through the gym bag she now carried. Her hoodie smelled faintly of gasoline. It wasn't adding up. But I said nothing. I didn't want to accuse. I wanted her to reveal herself. That's how I learned how long the thread had been pulling loose. Long before the flowers. I started seeing the signs everywhere. The day she came home with a small scratch on her forearm, I asked what happened. She shrugged it off. Just bumped into a file cabinet. I knew her clinic. They didn't have metal drawers like that. They'd upgraded years ago. The scratch looked like a line from a nail, maybe one sticking out from a pier piling or an old dock. One weekend I suggested we drive up to Tahoe. The lake was always her favorite. She told me she couldn't, said work was short-staffed and she had to cover a shift. She forgot that I still had the base login for the medical schedule. She wasn't listed at all that weekend. That Saturday, she posted a photo of a book on our patio table, captioned with something about lazy weekends, and hot tea. But the timestamp in the background, a reflection in the glass door, showed it was taken 2 weeks ago. That's when I realized she'd been stockpiling photos, curating a timeline, for who I didn't know yet. But I knew it wasn't me. One night, I heard her laughing on the phone. Not a conversation, just a single laugh, breathy and short. She was in the bathroom with the door closed. I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the mirror as she tilted her phone to selfie mode, adjusted her hair, and smiled. She walked out a minute later, said she was texting her sister about Thanksgiving. Her sister lives abroad. 12-hour time difference. It was 2 a.m. her time. I stopped asking questions. Instead, I started paying attention to her language. The way she'd changed certain phrases. She didn't say our place anymore, just the house. She stopped calling me by name. Just hey or babe, like it could apply to anyone. And when we were with friends, she was animated, lit up. Her eyes sparkled in ways I hadn't seen in years. But when we got home, she'd retreat, headphones in, door half shut, laughing into her phone like she was still somewhere else. One evening, I offered to cook dinner. She told me she already ate, said she grabbed something while out running errands. I checked the bank app. There was a charge from a drive-through seafood shack, but for 2 meals. I remembered then how she used to keep receipts in her purse, coupons, old movie stubs, scribbled grocery lists. One night while she was asleep, I looked. The receipts were gone. All of them. Her purse was pristine, as if cleaned for inspection. No clutter, no loose change. Just her wallet and a single lipstick I hadn't seen her wear in months. She used to be messy, in the way you are when you live comfortably with someone. Now she was curated, composed, too composed. Once, when I borrowed her car to run an errand, I noticed her mileage didn't match the places she claimed to go. She said she drove to CVS 2 miles away, but her odometer showed she'd gone 26 that day. That's enough to get to the coast. And back. Another day, I found a stray parking stub wedged between the passenger seat and the door. A faded slip from Harbor View Lot C. Dated the same weekend, she told me she was volunteering at a local blood drive. There was no blood drive. I called the local Red Cross chapter pretending to be a donor. They had no events that weekend. I wish I could say I confronted her, that I walked into the room and demanded the truth. But I didn't, because by then, I'd already started grieving. Not the relationship, that was already dead. I was grieving the version of her that I thought was real. The woman who stayed up late helping me prep for board exams. The woman who sent care packages when I was stationed overseas. The woman who cried the day I missed her birthday because my ship got rerouted during a storm. I realized something strange during those weeks. Betrayal doesn't come all at once. It doesn't slam the door in your face. It leaves it cracked. Just enough that you can see the shadow walking away. There were days I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. That maybe I was being unfair, paranoid from years of being on edge, trained to expect danger in ordinary places. But then I'd catch another detail. Another missed stitch in the fabric of our life. Like the necklace. She started wearing it around the house. Delicate, silver, with a charm I didn't recognize. A tiny wave, etched into a metal disc. I asked where she got it. She said she bought it online. But one night, I saw her holding it between her fingers, smiling down at it like it meant more than that. Like it was a reminder, a souvenir, of what I didn't ask. There's a unique kind of loneliness that settles in when the person who's supposed to be your closest ally becomes a stranger. And they don't even know you see it. Some days, I'd find myself replaying old conversations, wondering if I'd missed the warning signs. If maybe there was a moment I could have stopped it, a version of myself that would have been enough to make her stay. But those thoughts are poison. They turn you into your own captor. So I let them pass like waves. Let them rise, crash, and retreat. I wasn't going to plead, or beg, or pretend I didn't see what I saw. Instead, I waited, because sooner or later, whatever or whoever she was hiding, it would come out into the light. And when it did, I needed to be ready. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything I'd been suspecting turned into something I could no longer deny. The sky was overcast, a gray wash that made the whole town look like it had been drained of color. Kelly had told me she had a meeting at the clinic that day, a budget discussion that might run late. She said it in that rehearsed, casual way people do when they've practiced the lie more than once. Something in her tone told me not to let it go this time. Around 4, I got in my truck and drove aimlessly, or at least that's what I told myself. The road pulled me toward the harbor, the one near the old docks where the fishermen still parked their rusted pickups and pelicans perched on pylons like silent sentinels. I hadn't been there in months. It was the same harbor where I kept my boat, a 30-foot patrol vessel I'd spent years refurbishing, piece by piece. She was supposed to be my retirement project, my escape. Kelly had joked about naming her second wind. Now, I wondered if she'd meant something else by it. As I turned onto the gravel road leading to the dock, I saw it. Kelly's car, parked beside the cafe that overlooked the water, half hidden behind a row of bait coolers. My chest tightened. There was no clinic meeting here, no budget talk, just the quiet rhythm of waves against hulls and the faint metallic sound of rigging clinking in the wind. For a few minutes, I just sat there in the truck, gripping the steering wheel. My mind went blank. Not angry, not scared, just still. Then I got out. I kept my distance, walking along the dock with the kind of slow, deliberate calm I'd learned from years of inspections. No sudden moves, no emotion, just observation. That's when I saw them. Kelly was sitting on the deck of my boat. My boat. The one I had spent every free weekend sanding, polishing, dreaming about. She was leaning against the railing, laughing in that same bright, practiced way I'd heard so many times lately. Across from her stood a man, mid-40s tall, in a baseball cap and rolled-up sleeves. His posture was relaxed, confident, too comfortable. He rested his hand on her thigh. She didn't move it away. They were looking over papers, sheets spread across a cooler, the wind lifting the corners. Kelly said something, and he chuckled, reached into his jacket, and handed her a pen. She signed something on his knee, her handwriting looping gracefully across the page. From where I stood, I could see the curve of her smile, the way her hand lingered after she finished signing, how he looked at her. Not like a client, not like a coworker, but like someone who already had her. I didn't need to see more. I turned away before they could notice me. I walked back to the truck and sat there until the sun started to dip behind the marina warehouses. The whole world around me blurred. The smell of diesel, the cries of gulls, the slow slap of water against the hulls. It all mixed together into something unreal. I wanted to feel angry, but I couldn't. What I felt was clarity. I knew, deep down, that whatever I'd just seen wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't some harmless mistake or a friendly moment. It was deliberate, intentional. But it wasn't until later that evening that I realized it was worse than that. Not just betrayal of love, but betrayal of trust, of legality, of ownership. When I finally went down to the boat a few days later, after the ache in my chest had dulled into something cold and sharp, I noticed the papers still sitting on the small cabin desk, folded neatly, like a cruel little gift waiting for me. They were sale documents, transfer of ownership, my boat, sold. The signature at the bottom, my name in my handwriting. Only it wasn't. It was close, though. Close enough to pass a quick glance. Kelly's signature sat beside it, her neat cursive looping like an echo of every lie she'd ever told. The buyer's name was the man from the dock, a local boat dealer known for buying used vessels for cash. I recognized his company's logo from the paper heading. Bayfront Marine Exchange. The date of sale was 2 days before I saw them together. The number on the form made my stomach twist. She had sold it for a fraction of what it was worth. Later that week, I got a call from the Coast Guard's administrative office. A routine check. They were verifying the sale because the new owner had attempted to register the boat under a different name. Something about mismatched VIN tags. The officer on the line asked if I had authorized the transfer. I said no. Flatly. The silence that followed was heavy. When he emailed me a copy of the documents, I opened them slowly, like unwrapping a wound. There it was again, my fake signature. Kelly's real one, and a notary stamp that didn't match any local registry. The officer told me they were escalating it for fraud review. My name would be cleared, but they needed her statement. That night, I didn't confront her. She came home late, as usual, her cheeks flushed from wind or guilt. I couldn't tell which. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if I'd eaten. I told her yes. She smiled, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat across from me at the table, flipping through her phone as if nothing had changed. I looked at her for a long time. The woman sitting across from me wasn't my wife anymore. She was someone else entirely. Someone capable of taking what was mine, putting her name on it and walking away smiling. It hit me then how quiet real betrayal is. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream. It just arrives, sits at your table, and drinks your wine like it belongs there. That night, I went out to the porch after she'd fallen asleep. The streetlights flickered in the distance. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barked. My hands trembled as I lit a cigarette, the first one in years. The smoke curled into the air, and I watched it disappear, wondering how long it had taken her to become this person. Or if maybe she'd always been this person, and I'd just been too blind to see it. The next morning, I drove to the Coast Guard station in person and gave my statement. The officer thanked me, said they'd handle it from there. He didn't ask about her. He didn't have to. The look in his eyes said he'd seen this before. When I got home, Kelly was in the garden, pruning the roses, the same kind that had come in that first bouquet. She looked peaceful, humming softly to herself. I stood at the window watching her. I didn't feel hate, not even sadness. Just a strange, quiet resignation. It was over, even if she didn't know it yet. Because once you see the truth, really see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. That evening, she came inside, wiping her hands on a towel, and asked what I wanted for dinner. Her tone was light, casual, like nothing had changed. I looked at her for a long time before I answered. "Whatever you want," I said, and I meant it, because from that moment on, nothing she wanted or said mattered anymore. There's a kind of moment you don't forget. Not because it's loud or dramatic, but because of how still it is. Still like the inside of a chapel, like the eye of a storm. That's what it felt like the night after I came back from the Coast Guard office. Not rage, not heartbreak, just silence. Dense, thick, almost reverent. Kelly was home before me that day. When I walked in, the lights were low, and the TV was humming some forgettable sitcom laugh track. She was curled up on the couch in her robe, her hair still damp, like she'd just stepped out of a long bath. She looked relaxed, calm, like someone who thought she'd gotten away with it. I said nothing. I took off my boots, set them neatly by the door, walked past her with a quiet, "Hey." She didn't turn around, just gave me a lazy wave and kept her eyes on the screen. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a beer, and sat down at the dining table, the same table where the flowers had been weeks earlier. It was gone now. Everything had been rearranged. That was her pattern. Whenever she was hiding something, she cleaned, controlled the space, wiped down the evidence of whatever guilt still lingered. She joined me a few minutes later, said she was thinking of repainting the bedroom. "Something brighter," she said. "Maybe a soft yellow? Like that would change anything." I nodded. She asked about my day. I lied. Told her I had coffee with an old friend from base. She smiled and said that sounded nice. I asked her how her day was. She said, "Busy." That was it. We sat in the same room, two people occupying the shell of a life that used to mean something. The worst part wasn't the lies anymore. It was how easy they came, how ordinary it had become to be dishonest. After dinner, she washed the dishes. I watched her from the porch, the faint sound of water running through the open window behind me. The air smelled like freshly cut grass. Our neighbor was mowing his lawn, humming some off-key tune I couldn't place. In that moment, everything felt too normal, like the world had no interest in what I just discovered. No one was coming to blow the whistle to interrupt the show. It was just me and this quiet unraveling. And the strange thing? I didn't feel like breaking anything. I didn't want to throw accusations across the table or scream about betrayal. All I wanted to do was let go. There's a misconception that when someone betrays you, you need to rage, to demand answers. But the truth is, the deeper the betrayal, the less energy you have for theatrics. When something inside you snaps, really snaps, what fills its place isn't fire. It's cold. That night, I logged into our shared account and withdrew every cent I was legally entitled to. I transferred it to an account in my name, one I'd quietly opened earlier that week, just in case. I left enough in hours to keep the lights on for a while. I didn't want her to know yet, not until I was already gone. Then I pulled out the drawer where we kept all the legal documents, mortgage papers, insurance, my military discharge paperwork. I started separating what was mine from what was ours. I didn't feel like a man planning revenge. I felt like someone preparing to evacuate. Like a hurricane was on the horizon and I was boarding up windows. Around midnight, I took off my wedding ring. I set it on the dresser, next to the keys to the boat she'd tried to steal from under me. I looked at it for a long time. That simple gold band had been through 20 years of life with me. Deployments, funerals, promotions, anniversaries. It had scars. Tiny dents and scratches like the rings on a tree. And now it meant nothing. I left it there. When I climbed into bed, Kelly was already asleep. She had her back to me, curled up tight, the way she used to when we were first married. She used to reach behind her in the dark and hold my hand, like she couldn't fall asleep unless she knew I was there. She didn't reach this time. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan turning overhead. The blades creaked with every slow rotation. Around 3 a.m. I got up, padded out to the living room and sat on the couch in the dark. I didn't want to be next to her anymore. I didn't want to feel her breath or smell her perfume or pretend that anything about this was okay. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not directly. Because confrontation implied that I still wanted something from her. An apology, an explanation, some kind of resolution. I didn't want anything. When she woke up and found the bed empty, she came out and saw me sipping coffee in the kitchen. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, yawning. "Nope. You okay?" "Yeah," I said without looking up. "Just thinking." She hesitated, then nodded. "I was going to run to the store later. Need anything?" "No." It went on like that for days. Polite distance. Surface-level chatter. Like we were two roommates who had once been married and now were just waiting out a lease. She tried to act normal, maybe too normal. Coffee in the morning, small talk about the weather, asking what I wanted for dinner. She'd lean into me occasionally, brush her hand across my back as she passed me in the hallway. But it felt forced, like she was trying to fill a silence that had already become a canyon. One evening, she asked if I wanted to go out. "For old times," she said. I told her I was tired. She nodded, lips tight, and went upstairs without another word. The next day, she called me at the base. Or tried to, anyway. She didn't know I wasn't there anymore. I'd finished my final processing 2 weeks ago, cleared out my locker, turned in my credentials. I was done. But I hadn't told her. When I checked my phone later, I had 3 missed calls and 1 voicemail from her. "Hey babe, just checking in. I thought you were still working today? I must have misunderstood. Anyway, call me when you get this. Love you." The message played on speaker as I sat in the driveway, engine still running. I didn't call her back. Something shifted after that. She started noticing the distance. Not just emotionally, physically. I stopped responding to her little touches. I stopped looking her in the eye. When she kissed me on the cheek, I didn't turn into it. I stayed still, and I could tell it bothered her. She started getting quieter, more reserved. She made dinner but didn't ask me to join. She folded laundry but left mine on the end of the bed. She didn't ask where I was going anymore. Maybe she sensed that I wasn't going to answer. The reversal happened so slowly she didn't even realize it at first. But I did. All those weeks, maybe months, when I was the one chasing, the one doubting myself, questioning her stories, clinging to whatever crumbs of affection she offered. That dynamic was gone now. I pulled away quietly, fully. And the thing about people who thrive on secrecy, who build lies like scaffolding, they panic when the person they've fooled stops playing along. Kelly tried to reach me through gestures. Fresh-baked cookies, folded notes on my windshield, a playlist of old songs we used to dance to in the kitchen. But it was too late, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. It was strange how quickly the house started to feel like it wasn't mine anymore, like I was already living somewhere else, even though I hadn't packed a single bag. That week, I started sleeping on the couch. I told her it was because of my back. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push, because she could feel it, too. The distance between us had grown bigger than the house we lived in, and I had no intention of crossing it again. Something changed in her the day I didn't call back. Maybe it was the missed voicemail or the way I started moving through the house like a guest instead of a husband. Maybe she noticed the silence wasn't reactive anymore. It was settled, deliberate. Whatever it was, she felt it. She started trying. For the first time in what felt like years, Kelly made breakfast. Not just toast and coffee, a full spread. Eggs the way I liked them. Bacon cooked soft, not crisp. She even set the table. I came into the kitchen to find everything waiting. Cloth napkins, real silverware, orange juice poured into actual glasses instead of the mismatched mugs we usually used. I didn't say anything, just sat down, nodded politely, and ate in silence. She watched me like she was waiting for a reaction. When none came, she said, "I thought it might be nice. Like old times." I just kept chewing. Not to be cruel. I just didn't owe her anything anymore. She cleared the table quietly after, humming a tune that sounded too cheery, too out of place. I caught her checking her reflection in the microwave door, fluffing her hair, pinching her cheeks for color. When she caught me watching, she smiled like nothing happened, like we were still pretending. That night, she came to the couch, curled up beside me, and laid her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. She whispered, "I've missed you." I stayed still, not cold, just done. She didn't know what to do with that. For years, I'd been the one chasing her attention, trying to keep the conversation going, finding ways to close the distance. Now I was a wall, solid, unmoved. She started asking questions. "Is everything okay? You seem off lately. Did I do something?" The irony wasn't lost on me. All those months she was drifting, brushing me off with vague excuses, shrugging off an asterisk Macy like it was a burden. She never once asked if I was okay. Now that I was quiet, suddenly my silence was a threat. I gave her what she'd given me. Half smiles, short answers, nods that didn't lead anywhere. I didn't lie. I didn't accuse. I just withheld. And she started to unravel. She began sending me texts during the day, things she hadn't done in years. Photos of the dog from down the street. A picture of a flower blooming in the yard. A selfie with a caption that said, "Thinking of you." I didn't respond to any of them. She called the base again the following week. I knew she would. And again, she was told I no longer worked there. When I got home that night, she was pacing the kitchen. Her phone was on the counter, screen still lit with a call log. She looked up as I walked in and said, "They said you don't work there anymore. Did you leave early?" I shrugged, took off my jacket, hung it neatly on the hook. "You didn't tell me," she said. "No," I answered. "Why?" I didn't look at her. Didn't seem important. She stared at me, waiting for more. I opened the fridge and took out a bottle of water. "Mark," she said quietly, "you're scaring me." I finally met her eyes. "Why?" "Because I don't know what's going on with you." I smiled, not out of cruelty, just fatigue. "Yeah," I said. "I know the feeling." She didn't ask anything else. That night, she lingered near the bedroom door while I gathered a few things to sleep on the couch again. She crossed her arms, leaned against the frame. "Are we okay?" she asked. I paused. "Are we?" "I don't know," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. "You tell me." I walked past her, brushed her shoulder gently, the way someone might steady a stranger in a crowd. "I'm tired," I said. "We'll talk later." But we never did. And I think she finally understood what was happening. Not in one sudden burst, but in small pieces. She started changing her routine, coming home earlier, dressing more conservatively. She stopped going on her morning runs, started inviting me to things, dinner with her coworkers, a movie night, a walk on the beach. I declined each one with a simple no thanks. I wasn't being cold. I was just done giving more than I got. And it shook her. One evening, I walked into the living room to find her crying softly. She was sitting cross-legged on the carpet, flipping through an old photo album. Our wedding photos, vacations. Her smile in those pictures was wide, easy, honest, maybe even real. She looked up at me, mascara trailing down her cheek, and said, "We were happy once." I nodded. "Yeah, we were." She sniffed. "Do you still love me?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because answering would have meant entering the ring again, and I'd already walked away from the fight. Instead, I said, "You should get some sleep." The next morning, she made me coffee before I even got out of bed. She sat beside me while I drank it. Didn't say a word, just watched. When I left to go to the DMV, part of tying up loose ends for the boat paperwork, she offered to come with me. I told her no. She said, "Maybe afterward we could get lunch?" I didn't commit. That afternoon she baked banana bread. I hadn't had it in years. Used to be my favorite. She left it on the table with a little sticky note that said, "Just because." I threw the note away and put the bread in the fridge. That evening, she stood in the hallway as I walked to the couch with my blanket and pillow. "Mark, please," she said. "Whatever's going on, can we fix it? I'll do anything." I turned to her, looked at her, really looked, and said, "You can't fix what you broke on purpose." She stepped back like I'd struck her. And I meant it, every word, because none of this, not the distance, not the silence, not the sadness, had been accidental. You don't slip into deception. You climb into it one lie at a time and zip it up like a wetsuit. And eventually the water finds its way in. She didn't reply. She just stood there, frozen in the hall while I walked away, not in anger, not in protest, just in peace. That weekend she started bringing up therapy. "Maybe we could talk to someone," she said, "like a counselor, just once." I told her I wasn't interested. She pushed. "Can't we just try?" I asked, "What would you tell them?" She stared at the floor. "I'd tell them I want to fix this. And I'd tell them I'm not sure what there is left to fix." She didn't bring it up again. After that, she became almost polite, apologetic in the way someone becomes when they've lost control of a narrative. The attempts kept coming. Kind gestures, soft words, small confessions about things she might have mishandled. She never mentioned the boat, never brought up the card from the flowers, never admitted to anything directly. She was hoping the silence would cover the cracks. But I'd stopped looking for closure, because closure is a myth, a polite name for permission. And I didn't need permission to walk away. I'd already made my peace. And Kelly? She was finally starting to realize what it felt like to be the one left behind. A week later, the Coast Guard confirmed the forgery. Kelly was officially under investigation. I didn't warn her. The morning the summons came, she stood on the porch in a white blouse, waiting for me to drive her. I walked right past her and left. No words, no explanation, just silence. She stood frozen, realizing help wasn't coming. And for the first time, I felt light, like a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying had finally lifted. A month later, I bought a decommissioned patrol boat and named her Freetide. I left the harbor alone. The sea smelled like salt and freedom. My phone rang constantly, Kelly begging to talk, to explain, to undo it all. I dropped the phone in a drawer and let it ring. Behind me trailed a clean wake. Ahead, the sky opened wide. I realized then, the ocean doesn't lie. It reflects only what you bring aboard. And now, finally, I was alone with nothing left to lose.